I've heard many great speeches on leadership, but this special talk, given by Major C A Bach, an officer back in 1917, 1919 during World War I, that gave this message to a new class of promoting officers. So imagine, he's an instructor at the second training camp at Fort Sheridan, and he's giving this talk, and you are an officer, and a major comes up to give this talk on leadership. The message was so profound that the officers kept talking about it because they wanted to hear it again, since one time was not enough, to the point where the Daily Herald Times heard about it, and they went to the Colonel James R. Ryan, and they ended up getting the speech and publishing it on January 27th, 1918. You may have to listen to this a couple of times. It is that profound. So this speech is by Major C A Bach. Let's get right into it. In a short time, each of you men will control the lives of a certain number of other men. You will have in your charge loyal but untrained citizens who look for you for instruction and guidance. Your word will be their law. Your most casual remark will be remembered. Your mannerisms will be aped. Your clothing, your carriage, your vocabulary, and your manner of command will be imitated. When you join your organization, you will find that there are a willing body of men who ask from you nothing more than the qualities that will command their respect, their loyalty, their obedience. They are perfectly ready and eager to follow you so long as you can convince them that you have these qualities. When the time comes that they are satisfied you do not possess them, you might as well kiss yourself goodbye. Your usefulness in that organization is at an end. How remarkably true this is in all manner of leadership. From the standpoint of society, the world may be divided into leaders and followers. The professions have their leaders. The financial world has its leaders. All this leadership is difficult, if not impossible, to separate from the element of pure leadership that selfish element of personal gain or advantage to the individual, without which any leadership will lose its value. It is in military service only, where men freely sacrifice their lives for a faith, where men are willing to suffer and die for the right of the prevention of a wrong, that we can hope to realize leadership in its most exalted and disinterested sense. Therefore, when I say leadership, I mean military leadership. In a few days, the great mass of you men will receive commissions as officers. These commissions will not make you leaders. They will merely make you officers. But they will place you in a position where you can become leaders if you possess the proper attributes. But you must make good, not so much with the men over you as with the men under you. Make excuses for the shortcomings of others, if you wish, but hold yourself to a strict accountability if you would attain leadership in any undertaking. Men must and will follow into battle officers who are not leaders, but the driving power behind these men is not enthusiasm, but discipline. They go with doubt and trembling that prompts the unspoken question, what will he do next? Such men obey the letter of their orders, but no more. Of devotions to their commanders, of exalted enthusiasm which scorns personal risk, or self-sacrifice to ensure his personal safety, they know nothing. Their legs carry them forward because their brain and their training tell them they must go. Their spirit does not go with them. Great results are not achieved by cold, passive, unresponsive soldiers. They don't go very far, and they don't stop as soon as they can. Leadership not only demands but receives the willing, unhesitating, unfaltering obedience and loyalty of other men, and a devotion that will cause them, when time comes, to follow their uncrowned king to hell and back again, if necessary. If you ask yourselves, of what then does leadership consist? What must I do to become a leader? What are the attributes of leadership, and how can I cultivate them? Leadership is a composite number of qualities, just as success is a composite of the 15 factors out of which this reading course was built. Among the most important, I would list self-confidence, moral ascendancy, self-sacrifice, paternalism, fairness, initiative, decision, dignity, courage. Self-confidence results first from exact knowledge, second, the ability to impart that knowledge, and third, the feeling of superiority over others that naturally follows. All these give the officer poise. To lead, you must know. You may bluff all of your men some of the time, but you can't do it all of the time. Men will not have confidence in an officer unless he knows his business, and he must know it from the ground up. The officer should know more about the paperwork than the first sergeant and command clerk put together. He should know more about messing than the mess sergeant, more about diseases than the horse than his troop farrier. He should be at least good a shot as any man in his company. If the officer does not know, and he demonstrates the fact that he does not know, it is entirely human for the soldiers to say to himself, "To hell with him. He doesn't know as much about this as I do," and calmly disregard the instructions received. There is no substitute for accurate knowledge. Become so well informed that men will hunt you up to ask questions, that your brother officers will say to one another, Ask Smith, he knows." And not only should each officer know thoroughly the duties of his own grade, but he should study those of the 2 grades next up above him. A twofold benefit attaches to this. He prepares himself for duties which may fall to his lot at any time during the battle. He further gains a broader viewpoint which enables him to appreciate the necessity for the issuance of orders and to join more intelligently in their execution. Not only must the officer know, but he must be able to put what he knows into grammatical, interesting, forceful English. He must learn to stand on his feet and speak without embarrassment. I am told that in British training camps, student officers are required to deliver a 10-minute talk on any subject they choose. That is excellent practice, for to speak clearly, one must first think clearly, and clear logical thinking expresses itself in definite positive orders. While self-confidence is the result of knowing more than your men, moral ascendancy over them is based upon your belief that you are the better man. To gain and maintain this ascendancy, you must have self-control, physically vital, and endurance and moral force. You must have yourself so well in hand, even though in battle you be scared stiff, you will never show fear. For if by such much a hurried movement of a trembling of the hands, or a change of expressions, or hastily revoked, you indicate mental condition that would be reflected in your men in a far greater degree. In garrison or camp, many instances will arise to try to temper and wreck the sweetness of your disposition. If at such times you fly off the handle, you have no business to be in charge of men, for men in anger say and do things they almost invariably regret afterwards. An officer should never apologize to his men. Also, an officer should never be guilty of an act for which his sense of justice tells him he should apologize. Another element in gaining moral ascendancy lies in the possession of enough physical vitality and endurance to withstand hardship to which you and your men are subjected, and a dauntless spirit that enables you not only to accept them cheerfully, but to minimize their magnitude. Make light of your troubles, belittle your trials, and you will help vitally to build up within your organization a spirit whose values in times of stress cannot be measured. Moral force is the third element in gaining moral ascendancy. To exert moral force, you must live clean. You must have sufficient brain power to see the right and the will to do right. Be an example to your men. An officer can be power for good or power for evil. Don't preach to them. That will be worse than useless. Live the kind of life you would have them lead, and you will be surprised to see the number that will imitate you. A loud-mouthed, profane captain who is careless in his professional appearance will have a loud-mouthed, profane, dirty company. Remember what I tell you. Your company will be the reflection of yourself. If you have a rotten company, it will be because you are a rotten captain. Self-sacrifice is essential to leadership. You will give all the time. You will give of yourself physically for the longest hours. The hardest work and the greatest responsibility are the lot of the captain. He is the first man up in the morning and the last man in at night. He works while others sleep. You will give yourself mentally in sympathy and appreciation for the troubles of men in your charge. This one's mother has died, and that one has lost all the savings in a bank failure. They may desire help, but more than anything, they desire sympathy. Don't make the mistake of turning such men down in the statement that you have troubles of your own. For every time you do that, you knock a stone out of the foundation of your house. Your men are your foundation. and your house of leadership will tumble about your ears unless it rests securely upon them. Finally, you will give your own slender financial resources. You will frequently spend your own money to conserve the health and well-being of your men, or to assist them when in trouble. Generally, you get your money back. Very frequently, you must charge it off profit and loss. Even so, it is worth the cost. When I say that paternalism is essential to leadership, I use the term in its better sense. I do not refer to that form of paternalism which robs men of initiative, self-reliance, and self-respect. I refer to the paternalism that manifests itself in a watchful care for the comfort and welfare of those in your charge. Soldiers are much like children. You must see that they have shelter, food, and clothing, and the best that your utmost efforts can provide. You must see that they have food to eat before you think of your own, that they have each as good of a bed as can be provided before you consider where you will sleep. You must be far more solicitous of their comfort than your own. You must look after their health. You must conserve their strength by not demanding needless exertion or useless labor. And by doing all these things, you are breathing life into what would be otherwise a mere machine. You are creating a soul in your organization that will make the mass respond to you as though they were one man. And in that spirit, no accurate thinker will judge another person by that which that person's enemies say about him. And when your organization has the spirit, you will wake up some morning and discover that the tables have been turned. That instead of you consistently looking out for them, they have, without even a hint from you, taken up the task of looking out for you. You will find that a detail is there to see that your tent, if you have one, is promptly pitched, and that the most cleanest bedding is brought to your tent, that for some mysterious source 2 eggs have been added to your supper when no one else has any, that an extra man is helping your men give your horse super grooming, that your wishes are anticipated, that every man is Johnny on the spot. And then you have arrived. You cannot treat all men alike. The punishment that would be dismayed by one man with a shrug off the shoulders is a mental anguish for another. A company commander who, for a given offense, has a standard punishment that applies to all his is either too indolent or too stupid to study the personality of his men. In his case, justice is certainly blind. Study your men as carefully as a surgeon studies a difficult case, and when you are sure of your diagnosis, apply the remedy. And remember that you apply the remedy to effect a cure, not merely to see the victim squirm. It may be necessary to cut deep, but when you are satisfied as to your diagnosis, don't be diverted from the purpose by any false sympathy for the patient. Hand in hand with fairness in awarding punishment walks fairness in giving credit. Everybody hates a human hog. When one of your men has accomplished an especially creditable piece of work, see that he gets his proper reward. Turn heaven and earth upside down to get it for him. Don't try to take it away from him and hog it for yourself. You may do this and get away with it, but you have lost the respect and loyalty of your men. Sooner or later, your brother officers will hear of it and shun it like a leper. In war, there is glory enough for all. Give the man under you his due. The man who always takes and never gives is not a leader. He is a parasite. There is another kind of fairness that which will prevent an officer from abusing the privilege of his rank. When you exact respect from soldiers, be sure you treat them with equal respect. Build up their manhood and self-respect. Don't try to put it down. For an officer to be overbearing and insulting in the treatment of enlisted men is the act of a coward. He ties the man to a tree with the ropes of discipline and then strikes him in the face, full well that the man cannot strike back. Consideration, courtesy, and respect from officers towards enlisted men are not incompatible with discipline. They are parts of our discipline. Without initiative and decision, no man can expect to lead. In maneuvers, you will frequently see when an emergency arises, men calmly give instant orders which later on analysis prove to be, if not exactly the right thing, very nearly the right thing to have done. You will see other men in emergencies badly rattled. Their brains refuse to work, and they give hastily orders. Revoke it, give another, revoke that. In short, show every indication of being in a blue funk. Regarding the first man, you may say, That man is a genius. He hadn't had time to reason this thing out. He acts intuitively. Forget it. Genius is merely the capacity for taking infinite pains. The man who was ready is the man who has prepared himself. He has studied beforehand the possible situations that might arise. He has made tentative plans covering such situations. When he is confronted by the emergency, he is ready to meet it. He must have sufficient mental alertness to appreciate the problem that confronts him and the power to quick reasoning to determine what changes are necessary in his already formulated plan. He must also have the decision to order the execution and stick to his orders. Any reasonable order in an emergency is better than no order. The situation is there. Meet it. It is better to do something and do the wrong thing than to hesitate, hunt around for the right thing to do, and wind up doing nothing at all. And having decided on the line of action, stick to it. Don't vacillate. Men have no confidence in an officer who doesn't know his own mind. Occasionally, you will be called upon to meet a situation which no reasonable human being could anticipate. If you have prepared yourself to meet other emergencies which you can anticipate, the mental training you have thereby gained will enable you to act promptly and with calmness. You must frequently act without orders from higher authority. Time will not permit you to wait for them. Here again enters the importance of studying work of officers above you. If you have a comprehensive grasp of the entire situation and can form an idea, a general plan of your superiors, that your previous emergency training will enable you to determine that the responsibility is yours to issue the necessary orders without delay. The element of personal dignity is important in military leadership. Be the friend of your men, but do not become their intimate. Men should stand in awe of you, not fear. If your men presume to be familiar, it is your fault. It is not theirs. Your actions have encouraged them to do so, and above all things, don't cheapen yourself by courting their friendship or courting their favor. They will despise you for it. If you are worthy of their loyalty and respect and devotion, they will surely give all these without asking. If you are not, nothing that you can do will win them. It is exceedingly difficult for an officer to be dignified while wearing a dirty, spotted uniform and a 3 days stubble of whiskers on his face. Such a man lacks self-respect, and self-respect is an essential of dignity. There may be occasions when your work entails dirty clothes and unshaved face. Your men all look that way. At such times, there are ample reasons for your appearance. In fact, it would be a mistake to look clean. They would think that you were not doing your share. But as soon as this unusual occasion has presented, set an example for personal neatness. And then I would mention courage. Moral courage you need as well as mental courage. The kind of moral courage which enables you to adhere without faltering to the determined course of action which your judgment has indicated is the one best suited to secure the desired results. You will find many times, especially in action, that having issued your orders to do a certain thing, you will be beset by misgivings and doubts. You will see or think you see other and better means for accomplishing the object sought. You will be strongly tempted to change your orders. Don't do it unless it is clearly manifested that your orders were radically wrong. For if you do, you will be again worried by doubts as to the efficacy of your second orders. Every time you change your orders without obvious reasons, you weaken your authority and impair the confidence of your men. Have moral courage to stand by your orders and see it through. Moral courage further demands that you assume the responsibility for your own acts. If your subordinates have loyally carried out your orders and the movement of your directed is a failure, the failure is yours, not theirs. Yours would have been the honor if it had been successful. Take blame if it results in disaster. Don't try to shift your subordinate and make him the goat. That is a cowardly act. Furthermore, you will need moral courage to determine the fate of those under you. You frequently will be called upon for recommendations for promotions or demotions of officers and non-commissioned officers in your immediate command. Keep clearly in mind your personal integrity and the duty you owe to your country. Do not let yourself be defected from a strict sense of justice by feeling of personal leadership. If your brother is your second lieutenant and you find him unfit to hold his command, eliminate him. If you don't, your lack of moral courage may result in the loss of valuable lives. There is something wrong about the man whose wife and children do not greet him affectionately on his homecoming. If, on the other hand, you are called upon for a recommendation concerning a man whom personal reasons you thoroughly dislike, do not fail to do him full justice. Remember that your aim is the general good, and not the satisfaction of an individual grudge. I am taking it for granted that you have physical courage. I need not tell you how necessary that is. Courage is more than bravery. Bravery is fearlessness, the absence of fear. The merest dolt may be brave because he lacks the mentality to appreciate his danger. He doesn't know enough to be afraid. Courage, however, is that firmness of spirit, that moral backbone, while fully appreciating the danger involved, nevertheless goes on with the undertaking. Bravery is physical, courage is mental and moral. You may be cold all over, and your hands may be trembled, your legs may quake, your knees be ready to give away. That is fear. If nevertheless you go forward and in spite of this physical defection you continue to lead your men against the enemy, you have courage. The physical manifestations of fear will pass away. You may never experience them but once. They are the buck fever of the hunter who tries to shoot his first deer. You must not give way to them. A number of years ago, while taking a course in demolitions, the class of which I was a member was handling dynamite. The instructor said, regarding its manipulation, I must caution you gentlemen to be careful in the use of these explosives. One man has but one accident. And so I would caution you, if you give way to fear that will doubtless beset your first action, you show the white feather. You let your men go forward while you hunt a shell crater. You will never again have the opportunity of leading those men. Use judgment in calling your men for displays of physical courage or bravery. Don't ask a man to go where you will not go yourself. If your common sense tells you that the place is too dangerous for you to venture into, then it is too dangerous for him. You know his life is as valuable to him as yours to you. Occasionally, some of your men must be exposed to danger which you cannot share. A message must be taken across 5 swept zone. You call for volunteers. If your men know you and know that you are right, and you will never lack volunteers, for they will know your heart is in your work, that you are giving your country your best you have, that you would willingly carry the message yourself if you could. Your example and enthusiasm will have them inspired. And lastly, if you inspire leadership, I would urge you to study men. Get under the skins to find out what is inside. Some men are quite different from what they appear on the surface. Determine the workings of their minds. Much of General Robert E. Lee's success as a leader may be ascribed to his ability as a psychologist. He knew most of his opponents from West Point days. He knew the workings of their mind, and he believed that they would do certain things under certain circumstances. In nearly every case, he was able to anticipate their movement and block the execution. You cannot know your opponents in this war in the same way, but you can know your own men. You can study each to determine what lies his strength and his weakness, which man can be relied upon to the last gasp, and which cannot. Know your men, know your business, know yourself.